So my responsibility is to make sure that I'm creating a really positive environment where our manufacturers can be successful.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I am here with a good friend and the Connecticut Chief Manufacturing Officer, Paul Lavoie. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm great, Ari. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Always
Well,
happy to be
listen,
here.
I got to ask you, what do you make and why do you make it? Though the audience probably already knows. For anyone that hasn't seen, why don't you share with us?
So I make a successful environment for manufacturers in Connecticut to thrive, to be able to grow and thrive. So my responsibility is to make sure that I'm creating a really positive environment where our manufacturers can be successful.
Listen, so important for the state to have a chief manufacturing officer. We know it's a role that was just developed and you're only the second man on the job. And here we are today kind of talking about the end of the first year, the beginning of the second year. So really excited to sort of close out last year, talk about what you've seen, successes, challenges, and what we're going into the year. I think before we do that, just for the folks who maybe haven't met you, if there's anyone out there that hasn't, because with your, what is it, the L4 tour?
Yeah.
With the L4 tour, I can't imagine anyone hasn't. But just in case, maybe just a quick kind of your background in manufacturing and sort of how you ended up as the Chief Manufacturing Officer for
Sure.
Connecticut.
So appointed by Governor Lamont in February 2022 as Chief Manufacturing Officer, came to the job through Carey Manufacturing and actually was on the podcast as the General Manager of Carey Manufacturing as well. And then before that, I'd worked at Eder Engineering and then had owned some businesses that marketing agency and a business consulting firm that worked very, very closely with manufacturers. So you know, a good 15 years or so in the manufacturing sector, either serving manufacturers or working for a manufacturer. And Carey Manufacturing, very successful with reshoring efforts and workforce development efforts. And so we were pretty prominent within the state with those efforts at Carey. So.
Both things that the state in general could do a lot, right? Workforce development and reshoring, really good things. And listen, big fan of yours, as you know, and I think the background that you have, not just in manufacturing, but also in sort of like the business consulting and the sales and marketing probably serve you pretty well in this role, I would think.
Serve me very well. It's, you know, my job is you know, one of my key objectives is to relentlessly communicate with all stakeholders, right? So you have to have, you know, having that background of understanding how to communicate. You know, we talk about the L4 tour. I mean, that came out of, you know, I'm going to go out and visit manufacturers. I should amplify this. You know, should probably take a look at how I'm going to do that on social media. And then I said, well, I'm going to brand it. I'm going to give it a name, and the name is kind of expanded from there. And now it's a thing. So that's, you know, having that marketing background, understanding that I need to communicate to people to let them know all the really cool things that are happening here in Connecticut around manufacturing. So it helps me from that perspective to understand how to reach an audience.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, kind of pulling off of that, you came into the role, high hopes and expectations. I know, you know, you had some big shoes to fill and it was a hard fought, you know, position. They took it very, very seriously. I know that the governor and is really believes in manufacturing in Connecticut. So took this position really seriously. And now that you're in there and we're a year hence, what are some of the things you look back and go, wow, that's exactly what I thought? And what are some of the things you go, man, that was a curveball?
So, you know, the first thing I did when I took the job, and again, coming from the private sector, right? I've never worked in public service. This is my, you know, and so coming from the private sector, it's always been around customers. And how do you serve customers? And so I sat down kind of, you know, day one and said, all right, who are my customers? And, you know, manufacturers are my customers. So if you're a manufacturer in Connecticut, you're my customer. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get out and visit as many customers as I possibly could. And I wanted to do that because I really wanted to learn about what was happening out there in the ecosystem. You know, the workforce issue is prominent. Supply chain is prominent. Driving innovation is prominent. But I don't. Is understanding, you know, and I wasn't surprised by that. And by the way, the president issued strategic plan for national manufacturing, and the three issues are workforce, supply chain, and innovation. So, they didn't call me and ask
We were
me.
on it.
Yeah, but we were on it already. So, those are kind of universal issues. But I think the thing that surprised me the most is that how that workforce issue is preventing manufacturers from growing. The other issue is the supply chain impacts and how those are preventing manufacturers from being able to grow their organizations. And so it highlighted that for me, because then it gave me, it's giving me more of a laser focus on what are some of the things that we need to be addressing within manufacturing, what really needs to be in the strategic plan to be able to help manufacturers. So, and then it's, the other big surprise is all the really cool stuff that we make in Connecticut. I mean, just
were you surprised by that? It's certainly been something that, as I've gone through, I don't have an L4 tour, but as we've done the Made in America sort of interview tour, it has been really fascinating.
Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. From companies that have probes on Mars that NASA's going to go up in 10 years from now and pick them up because they're collecting samples. Right, that's Stratton Industries right in Stratford. All the way to the world's largest truffle factory is in West Haven, and then go out to Danbury to Lesser Evil, where they're making some of the best popcorn and that's so. But I mentioned those because those were the two best smelling factories that I walked through, followed not far behind by Ciabasso Bakery in New Haven, which is making bread, right? And but just some of the really, really neat things that we manufacture, and again, just the Artemis program, right? The NASA program where we're going back to the moon. 44 manufacturers in the state have parts or services in that project. Collins Aerospace makes the spacesuit that the astronauts wear. It's all done right here in Connecticut, and I'm getting that's a lot of feedback I get from the L4 tour on LinkedIn is, I didn't know that. I didn't know this was here. This is really cool, and just educating people about the manufacturing sector. So that was one of the big positive things about kind of getting out there was who knew, and all the cool stuff that we have, and then the partners that we have too, going out to UConn and going to the tech park or some of the universities and things that we have, and just understanding the resources we have were kind of some of the highlights. And then, like I said, some of the things that surprised me were really kind of the depth of the problem and really where we really need to put a laser focus on helping manufacturers to be able to help them grow.
So I went back to thinking about when we talked last year. We talked about 5 sort of strategic initiatives that you were going to be working on in the first year, and so we're going back to my notes here. We had building a robust workforce pipeline, healthy manufacturing ecosystem, culture of innovation, communicate with all stakeholders, and coordinate resources, simplify efforts. And those were no surprise to me when we talked about them back then. Those were not a lot of those things were things we talked about when you were at Carey Manufacturing and that have been bandied about, right? And so I wonder, as we look back and you think about those initiatives, where did we end up on those? Which ones do you feel like really made some progress on, and which ones are we still working hard at?
Yeah, so developing a robust workforce pipeline.
Easy problem.
My goal is that every manufacturing job in the state of Connecticut is filled with a qualified employee. Mm-hmm. Now that's a goal that's only momentarily achieved, because the moment you achieve it, somebody has an opening or somebody creates a job or somebody quits. And you really look at what we're doing from a workforce development perspective in the state. I mean, we have. I'm comfortable in saying that we have probably the top workforce development initiatives in the nation, in that we have a chief workforce officer, we have an office of workforce strategy, we have money that's going into workforce, we're continuing to invest in workforce development. If you want to have a career in Connecticut anywhere, and specifically manufacturing, it's easy to have a career based on our workforce development efforts, between getting people into the pipeline, between our technical high schools, our community colleges, our 4 universities. I mean, if you're an adult and you want to change careers, you can do that relatively easy, and there's lots of funding around it, and we have tremendous educators. Our system of workforce development around manufacturing, meaning the educators that we have in the Office of Workforce Development, again, you go outside the state of Connecticut and tell them what they do. People are like, "You're kidding me! You guys do all of that?" So from a workforce development perspective, we're good. I mean, we can always do better, and we can always do more. We have a workforce growth problem, right? I mean, we need people, that just need people, right? We need people to get in and that we can put through the system. So it really shifts the conversation when you think about that. Workforce development in the manufacturing sector is a win-lose scenario, right? Because I'm going to take, let's say you wanted a career in manufacturing. All right. Or 15 people in your company decide they don't want to work in IT anymore. They want to work in manufacturing. Great. I'll train them up and work in manufacturing. I have 15 jobs filled. Well, I just created 15 holes. Right. So that's what we're doing is we're just taking people and saying, well, if you want a career, if you're already here in Connecticut and you want a career in manufacturing, you can have a career in manufacturing. But what you left, we created a hole. So if we have 115,000 job openings, when we're done workforce development, we have 115,000 job openings, right? We're not, we take a look at labor participation rate and how we can get people off the bench and back into the workforce. And that's how we'll grow the workforce. That's one of the ways to grow the workforce. But we really need to have this workforce growth strategy. How are we going to get people excited about moving to Connecticut, coming to Connecticut, living in Connecticut, and working here in Connecticut in the manufacturing sector? 50% of the kids that go to 4 universities leave. I want to keep them here. If you learn in Connecticut, I want you to earn in Connecticut. So we have initiative and programs to be able to do that. But when we look at workforce development, it is, we do have a robust workforce system. We need more inputs we need more feedstock into the,
So
into the pipeline.
if I zoom out, what we're saying is, if I want to grow jobs in manufacturing, we got 3 areas we got to tackle. I got to have the demand for the product so that there's job openings to fill.
Which we have.
Check.
Check.
Then we need to have a path for people who want to work there to get some level of training in various different areas. So maybe it's in quality, maybe it's in production, maybe it's in welding, maybe it's in management, lean, scheduling, whatever the different roles are that are there. Your view is we've got programs, whether it's C-Tech or at the community colleges or individual. Your view is you feel like we've got the programs to get people trained up.
And they all have capacity.
So
double check.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got the training programs and places to put. Yeah. What we need is bodies to go in there to get trained, to fill the system. And your view is the only place we can really get bodies now is people that are employed somewhere else.
Well, we've got really 3 sources, right? Yep. So you look at labor participation rate. So people that have left the workforce that might be interested in getting back in the workforce. And that's where the governor has put a lot of money around childcare, and making sure that we have affordable childcare so people can get back to work. We're looking at transportation, how to get people to work, in manufacturing, the workforce that we really want to employ, because manufacturing is life-changing careers. Those people are in our cities. Well, our manufacturers all move to the suburbs. And we give bus and rail passes, but bus and rail passes don't go out to the suburbs. So we have to, they don't go buy manufacturing businesses. At Lesser Evil, for example, the bus line is the Walmart down the hill. They're about ready to buy a van just to shuttle people back and forth because you got to walk up the hill to get there. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at creative ways to be able to do that. But we need to get more people to work, easier to get them to work. So we have to look at the labor participation rate. Then we have to stop if you learn in Connecticut, I want you to earn in Connecticut. So I'm working very, very hard with all the universities and with manufacturers in building those bridges. If you're a manufacturer and you say you can't find engineers, you get a warm introduction to a dean of engineering at the university that's closest to you. And you're going to go visit them and you're going to sit down with them because they have a pipeline of engineers that we want to make sure stay employed. And then the third one, I think the third leg of that stool we need to be outside of Connecticut marketing how cool manufacturing is and letting people know that you can plant your flag, you can buy a house anywhere in Connecticut, have a tremendous career in manufacturing, working for a couple of different really cool companies if you wanted to, and never move your family. Right? And we have the second best education system in the country. Right? So you want to educate your kids. Connecticut's a place to do it, and we all know about the quality of life and all of that. So, in my opinion, this is my opinion, and I'll be sharing it with others as we go through the legislative session. It's a workforce growth and development strategy. And we need to focus on the growth because I think we've got, we can always do better in the development side, but I think we need more people coming through the system.
Yeah, if you're going to grow something in the garden, you got to have the seeds. Otherwise, it's not going to really help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Is there data behind your gut? In other words, do we know that the ideas that we think are right, the idea that we've got people in the inner cities that could do it if we only could get them to the jobs? Do we have good data behind that? We talked about workforce participation. I know the workforce participation numbers are way down. Do we know why, right? Like are there, for example, one reason workforce participation could be down is people retired.
Yes.
They're probably not coming back.
Right.
Right. And that's okay, right? They did their tour of duty or whatever you want to call it. Do we have a sense of like what's really the underlying causes for that? So we know how to, if we've done root cause analysis, so we know we're solving the right problem.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, we know, for example, we talked about childcare and transportation. We know that those are two really big issues. Is that it's childcare is expensive, right? And unless you're in a job that's making it worth it for you to actually have the job, it just makes more sense for you to stay home. So, again, the Office of Workforce Strategy has that data. And we know that those are the two key areas, but Kelly and I had a discussion with the governor, and we were talking about that's exactly what we need to do is we need to take a look at each vertical and say, what are the barriers to entry? Like we know in manufacturing, skilling up is a barrier, right? And having the resources to be able to go to a program to get the skills that you need, even possibly while you're working. We have a lot of people that they're like, listen, I can't go to a 2-year program. I need to get to work right away. And so, manufacturing requires some kind of skill development. So we're looking at kind of unconventional ways to skill up people. Can we do it at nights while you're working during the day? Can we, can we do shorter programs of shorter duration and go to a manufacturer and say, listen, we're going to do an 8-week program, but every year they're going to want to do an 8-week program. To condense it, and you should support that because they're going to get their education. I was talking to a group of manufacturers this morning in Cheshire, and I said, "Listen, when you get a job in manufacturing, your education has just started. It hasn't ended. Like there's no ending. You're graduating from whatever college or whatever. Your education has just started in manufacturing because of the rapid change that's happening in the manufacturing sector. So, we know, again, by sector, we have a really good idea of." And then we track labor participation rate is what DECD tracks. We don't track unemployment. We don't track any of that. We were at 67% pre-pandemic. We went to 62%. Last data that I saw, we were at 64.8%. So, we ain't where we want to be, but thank God we ain't where we used to be. So.
Moving us out, moving in the right direction. Where's manufacturing employment relative to pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so we are right at pre-pandemic levels. So there were 161,000 people that were working in manufacturing in February 2020. The last data that we have is November. We have the November data, and there was 161,200 people. Yeah. So we've had 20 consecutive months of growth in the manufacturing sector as it relates to jobs. We went from 161,000 to 147,000 jobs. So we lost 14,000. We lost 14,000 jobs from February to March, and now we have kind of crawled out of that, and we want to continue to see that consistent growth in the manufacturing sector and these are people working in the sector. So it's good to see that we're filling jobs that we've had open and working against the open jobs that we have in the manufacturing sector.
And so tough question, and then I want to move on to some other topics, but when do you think manufacturers will feel that the workforce issue is more behind us? Because I don't get the sense that the feeling is out there that it's sort of been addressed.
Yeah, hopefully never. In that when I say that we want them to continue to grow and to continue to create new jobs and all of that. But it's gotta, it's a great question because it's. I don't know when they'll feel that it's not such a problem anymore, and again, if there's, this is a national problem, right? There's 3 people for every job or 2 people for every job on a national basis, 1.2 in Connecticut. So it's a national problem. And so, at some point, when it's easier to hire or when we have all of the initiatives that we're working on that are running at full speed, I think they're going to start to see jobs being filled, and they're going to start to feel that we're making significant progress. And right now we're building the infrastructure to be able to do that. We're building the pathways. I call it the highway. We're building the highway with all the exit ramps, and we're trying to get as many people as we can into the manufacturing pathways and through this highway, and then going to manufacturers and saying, at each exit, how many people do you need? How many production workers do you need? How many engineers do you need? How many, and then working with the educators to say, this is what we have for workforce needs. So I think once that we have that system in place, once that system is running at full speed, it's a diesel engine, right? It's taking a long time for it to warm up. Once it's running at full speed, you're going to have this sense of confidence in the manufacturing sector that we're past the hard times of hiring and we're starting to make that progress. When is that? It can't come soon enough for me. So, and that's what we work on every single day in my office is how we're going to, and then again with the Office of Workforce Strategy, how are we going to solve that and get that, we have to have the inputs into the system, right? We have to continue to have, people that are going to be able to go through the system.
So what about the manufacturing ecosystem? One of the things you talked about was supporting a healthy ecosystem. You look back over the last 12 months, what do you see on that score?
We've made significant progress in that with just continuing to connect manufacturers. And there's some things that are, that are happening within the ecosystem that support that. Regional sector partnerships is one of those areas where we have manufacturers coming together to take a look regionally what their issues are and to work on solving those issues. They are a tremendous. They're my board. Every regional sector partnership is my board of strategic advisors. All across. So I have 5 boards around the state that, and every time they have a meeting, I make it a priority on my schedule to go to their meeting because I really want to hear these groups of manufacturers that are leading these areas across the state. I want to hear from them what the issues are so I can help. I always tell them, tell me what kind of bus you want. I'll build you the bus, but you're driving it and you got to get all the people on it, but I'll build it for you, And so that helps me to be able to do that. And it's this fascinating thing to see when you get manufacturers sitting around a table and talking without any outside interference. So there's nobody there trying to sell to them. They are so open to sharing. They're so open to helping each other out. I was talking to Doug Johnson at Marion Manufacturing this morning up in Cheshire, and he was telling me about they have a manufacturers roundtable there. And in that manufacturers roundtable, he's already done business with 3 other manufacturers in the town of Cheshire because through that roundtable he found out about them, and they're all helping each other and they're all working together. So they're so happy to collaborate. Additionally, we've done in 2022, we've done 3 manufacturers roundtable up at the Innovation Pavilion building at the Yukon Tech Park. And again, that's taking 8 to 10 manufacturers that don't know each other, getting them together at a roundtable at Yukon, giving them a tour of the facility there and all the great things that are available for manufacturers, but more importantly, letting them network with each other and letting them get to know each other and letting them get to help each other. And so it really is bringing all the manufacturers together in all kinds of different venues where they can collaborate and communicate and coordinate, and they're all really happy to do that. And there's this, a famous story pandemic-wise of Bauer Aerospace and A.G. Russell. Right, so 2 companies in Bristol. Bauer did a lot of work in commercial aerospace, and when the pandemic hit, they didn't need a lot of their engineers, and A.G. Russell was having trouble finding engineers. So the Bauer engineers went to work at A.G. Russell, and they stayed on Bauer's payroll. And so they just did this financial transaction between the 2 companies. It helped A.G. Russell get through this spurt in business because they do medical device manufacturing, right? So what were we doing in the pandemic? So they did the medical device manufacturing. And when that was done and commercial aerospace came back, those engineers went back to Bauer. Nobody intervened in that. They thought of that, the 2 of them, Mark Brzezinski and Lou Auletta thought about that themselves. Nobody got involved and told them that they should do that. But that's what you see with a healthy ecosystem where manufacturers are just talking to each other and working together. And my job is to really facilitate that. So, we've made significant progress doing that, but we'll continue to do that. That's one of the snowballs rolling down a hill. You get started and all of a sudden it starts happening without any kind of without any kind of ignition. You don't need anybody to
best part is right.
People together.
And then that's right. That's the whole thing about an ecosystem, the term in that word, right? It's sort of once you get the ecosystem sort of set up, it feeds and sort of makes itself go and it works better together.
Yeah.
I wonder, one of the other ones we had talked about was sort of the coordinating resources. And I wonder how you think about the ecosystem and the coordinating resources. Because, one of the things you and I even talked about prior to you having this role was and you hear about it a lot, right? The alphabet soup and trying to know where do I go for this and how do I know where to go? And so, we've got, for example, regional sector partnerships. We've also got manufacturing associations and some different groups. How do you think about the ecosystem and the coordinating of the resources and putting all that together so that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole?
Yeah, so we're doing a couple of things. We're first off, we're getting people that didn't typically work together in a room together to work together, and they're with long history of people that have run organizations. I look at the ecosystem as there's manufacturers, there's partners. So partners are things like CCAT and Constep and CT Next and Ready CT and associations and all of that. And then there's subject matter experts, and those are all the people that have all the products that manufacturers want. And so in looking at that, I'm really focusing on getting partners in a room together to work on things collectively. We did a panel discussion for Tunxus for their foundation up in Bristol, and we were talking about we'll get requests like Kelly, our chief workforce officer, or Ron Angelo, or Beatrice Gutierrez, or Christy Patima. We'll get requests from people in the ecosystem, and they'll send the same request to 5 of us, expecting maybe they'll find somebody to get onto it. But what we actually do is when we get the request and it's not in our area, we'll call that person saying, like Kelly will call me and say, Paul, I got this request. It's really about you. I'm laughing. I'm going, Kelly, I got it too. Right. And so I told people, the jig's up, we're on to you now. So, we're all coordinated and we're all talking. And I've set up, I have a monthly breakfast with Ron Angelo, Beatrice Gutierrez, Kelly, Valerie, just to, so that I can maintain, a great relationship and contact with them. But I can also look for those points of collaboration and look at those points of coordination. And I can, I'm the connector. So I'm going to be the one that's going to say, hey, Ron, you're working on this. You should need to get Beatrice involved with this because she has the feet on the street that'll be able to do this. And Ron will go, oh my God, it's a great idea. And so I'm looking at driving that collaboration together with our strategic partners in the manufacturing ecosystem. And again, doing the same thing with manufacturers as well. So
where have been some of the challenges? Have you found any challenges in sort of connecting those dots?
There's always challenges. I mean, there's always challenges. There's always history. There's always. I mean, the biggest challenge is, and I've had this conversation openly, so I'm not, is really lack of trust between people, and taking a look at, there's 6 or 7 companies that are partners that are working on an area, and well, if you take the lead, then you're not going to take care of me, and there's a lot of that stuff going on. So in my role, it's getting people to trust each other. And that's it's not easy, but I understand it, and I understand it's part of my role. And so I'm the one that's sitting there saying, no, you're gonna you're gonna do this, and you're gonna work with them, and well, I had bad experiences working with them. I know, but if for some reason you guys start butting heads again, I'll sit there and mediate. I'll mediate that as well. But that's how we get everybody. We had a conversation. We're talking about the ecosystem, and somebody says, "Well, everybody follows the money," and I said, "Well, I don't want people to do that. I want them to follow the mission. I want them to understand what the vision is for manufacturing. I want them to follow the mission, because if you follow the mission, the money will follow, right? And when everybody follows the mission, we're all going in the same direction. Versus, because there's a lot of this, well, why did they get funding? Why didn't I get the funding? Why did you give them the funding? But if everybody understands the mission, then there'll be plenty of money for everybody to get everything done. So I'm spending a lot of time just getting people in a room and getting, and doing things that, for example, Manufacturing Month. CCAT ran Manufacturing Month. Well, we're talking now, and it's October, we're talking now in January about holding a joint meeting with Constep, Ready CT, CT Next, all of these organizations that work around the manufacturing sector. And in January, we're going to start planning Manufacturing Month so we can do it big and we can get everybody involved. And we've never done that. We've never done that before. People do their own thing. I'm going to do this for Manufacturing Month. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's all great because everybody does great stuff. But imagine the power of this. This is not a 1 + 1 = 2. This is a 1 + 1 = 7. This is a multiplier. It's a multiplier effect when we get everybody in the same room talking about the same thing. So mission driven. What's the mission? And you'll see that coming out in the next month or so in the strategic plan. What's the vision for manufacturing in Connecticut? How can we rally everybody around that vision?
And that's really gets right back to the ecosystem and then coordinating and simplifying. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. We talked a lot about your kind of the L4 tour and going to see everyone. So I think we've checked off the communicate all stakeholders. I think you're feeling pretty good about that.
No, I actually I don't feel good about it. I think that that's probably the biggest outside of workforce is probably the biggest the biggest road ahead for me. In that it's people just don't know. They just don't know about manufacturing, and then so I'm very, very frustrated about 2 things, and that is the people come to me and say to me, Paul, I love what you're doing. How can I help? And I struggle with how I can get people to help me, right? How can you help me do my job? And the other area is I've been in far too many meetings where people have said things about the manufacturing ecosystem that just isn't true. It's not true. It's not factual. And they've said them in front of very important people. And I've gone up to the people afterwards and say, I don't know where you got that information. Well, somebody told it to me. I said, it's not true. It's not a factual piece of information. We've spent $100 million on 8-week training programs. That's not true. We've not done that. Don't say that anymore. And so I'm going out and I'm doing that. And so to do that, I've created a manufacturing ambassador program. It'll roll out in February. And I want an army of people that are going to be educated on manufacturing in the state so that when you're in a cocktail party and somebody says, oh, manufacturing is leaving the state, you can say, oh, no, it's not. Matter of fact, we've had 20 consecutive months of manufacturing growth. And did you know that, this company's adding a 50,000 square foot building and this company's doing this and this company just bought a new building and we just had 6 new companies. Advanced CT, the director of manufacturing at Advanced CT, has 39 active projects of manufacturers looking to come into the state of Connecticut. He's swarmed with manufacturers wanting to come to Connecticut. And so this is stuff that I want to get out. And so the ambassador program is going to allow me to, through webinars, through a weekly video of this is what Paul learned this week and things like that, to be able to communicate and create the positive energy that we need to have around the manufacturing sector. So I think that communicating to stakeholders is really one of the biggest objectives that we have versus, with workforce, because, and I think this is that the more positive vibes you have out there, the more people that are talking positive about it, the more the industry is going to grow. The more people are feeling good about it, the more the industry is going to grow. So it's a big, important part of our growth strategy is to continue that communication program. And we've got, we're building this comprehensive website for the Office of Manufacturing. And want to push as much information out to people that we can. And then again, I want to have this army of people that are dressed in swag that say, I'm a manufacturing ambassador. And I want people saying, what's that? Well, why do we have that? And what's going on? So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's terrific. Look, you're singing my song when you're talking about sort of acknowledging what we need to work on, but really got to sing the positive, because otherwise, what are you doing? If you're only focused on the negative, you're going to get more of it. Yeah. So where do you think the negative tropes recycle from?
Well, I just think it's that long history of just, Connecticut residents are our own worst enemy. It's just everybody, Connecticut. I was talking to there's a guy, Gary Decker, who runs a consulting business, moved to Connecticut. He moved from North Carolina to Connecticut. And he said, all these people in North Carolina are like, why are you moving to Connecticut? Like, are you kidding me? And he's absolutely, I always say Connecticut, the closer you look, the better we look. So it's really, we have this stigma of, you're either live in Fairfield County and wear pink and green, or your cities are corrupt. And that's the stigma of Connecticut. And so I'm really on this mission to talk about all the positive things that are happening in the state, to really put a focus, especially in the manufacturing sector, about, most people don't know, we're number 1 in aircraft engine and airplane parts manufacturing in the country. 25% of all aircraft engines that are in use in the United States are manufactured in Connecticut. Not Texas. How many Connecticut's can you put in Texas, right? And, I don't know, 300, 400, 500. I don't know what the number is, but it's not those. These are things that people should know to feel good about it. And like we say, we're in Connecticut, it's not as the glass half full as glass half empty. It's somebody stole the glass, and so I'm not, I'm looking at how I can fill the glass up, right? And so how we can have that opportunity. So I think it's I think that's a lot of the problem, is just that kind of, we've always, and again, the governor, full credit for that. I mean, absolutely, the financial condition that we have, the financial house is in order, there's money to invest. But the governor's probably one of the most optimistic and positive people in the state. I watched him do a presentation. He said they call him Ned Lasso. So he goes, he says, well, they call me Ned Lasso. He goes, so I took over a team that wasn't doing so well. He goes, they weren't really getting along. He goes, and we've won some games and we're doing pretty good. He goes, and we're going to win a championship. He goes, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, there you go. No, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually a really good pivot to say, so now what? So the year's over. I wonder, just maybe summarizing it, looking back on the first year, you happy with how it went?
I am. Yeah, no, I really am. And looking back, I visited over 140 manufacturers. I was going to look at the number of partners that I visited. I visited with, I think, everybody that's a really key partner. The subject matter experts are trying to get to me all the time, and I tell people I don't buy anything, so don't try to sell me anything. Go to my partners. They're the ones that are going to be able to evaluate your product. In doing all of that, I have this really great feedback from customers, and we started near the end of the year saying, okay, we understand the problem. Now we're going to start really working on the solutions, and how are we going to continue to develop those solutions? So we have this, in the strategic plan will be, and when I look at the strategic plan, I call it a skinny version, because this is going to be we need 2 or 3 things in each area that we just need to get done. And then when we get it done, we're going to have this parking lot of other initiatives we're going to keep bringing in. So every year we're going to do a report card against the strategic plan, and then we're going to do new initiatives in the strategic plan. So this is a year by year plan that we're going to look at just how it's going to drive that vision that we have for manufacturing. So I'm really, really happy with the way the year went. I was definitely overscheduled, definitely going in too many places, but I not upset about that. I've
Scaling back on that a little bit this year?
Managing it better. Not scaling back, but managing it better. So for example, I'd be on the road 5 days a week visiting manufacturers. And you guys, you asked me this question one time. Well, when do you do the other work?
Yeah.
And I'm home 8 o'clock at night, doing emails or working on Saturdays or things like that, which is fine, and I'm happy to do that. I have more energy now than I've had in the last 30 years, and I'm not young, and so I'm really excited and really passionate about what we're doing. But I've really got to start to. So I've said, listen, I'll do manufacturing visits on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesday, I need to be in Hartford, because that's when everybody in DECD is in Hartford. So that's where I need to build relationships there. And then, Mondays and Fridays are kind of flex days. If we need to squeeze manufacturing visits in there, we'll do it. If not, it gives me office time. It gives me quiet time. It gives me, and I spend a lot of time in my car. So I do a lot of listening to Made in America podcasts. I do a lot of, I do a lot of thinking, because I do a lot of public speaking. So I'll do a lot of, what am I going to say while I'm driving in the car? So I use productive use of the time, but it's managing my time better is really my objective for 2022. Still serve my customers, still do my job, but not overschedule myself as much as I've been.
Yeah, control your calendar. That's a huge thing. So aside from that, what are you, as you roll into 2023 here and you look forward? We talked about what your goals were for last year, those big items. What do you got on deck for this year?
Yeah, so it's really focusing on a couple of initiatives in each one of those 3 areas, right? So if you look at the, in the strategic plan structure, there's 3 pillars. Those 3 pillars are workforce growth and development, supply chain resiliency, and industry growth. How do we grow manufacturing? And it's all on this foundation of innovation. Everything we do is going to have a foundation of innovation. So how are we innovating to be able to solve the workforce problem? We're never going to solve the workforce problem with people. We're not going to do it. It's just, it's a national problem, right? So we have to look at innovative ways to increase productivity and efficiency within the manufacturing ecosystem. I visited a manufacturer, Assa Abloy, down in New Haven, and I walk in and they have these Munster punch presses, right? These machines were made in the 1950s that require an operator, and sitting in front of every one of those Munsters is a robot. Mm-hmm. And I said, you are taking 2020 technology and marrying it with 1950s technology, and they go, yeah. And I said, why? I can't get people to run those machines. And those machines just run. Those mechanical machines from the
those giant presses, they just go.
Munsters, they just go. And so really looking at where a company that might have all those machines is saying, I can't find people, to sit there and say, well, there's another answer. Right? We have to look at innovation. You can have a robot doing the work of what somebody would do. And again, this isn't replacing anybody's job.
Yeah, it's a combination.
We don't, again, there is going to be job growth in manufacturing as we go more and more with innovation, because you're going to have there'll be different jobs and different things like that. So, we're looking at, talking with Ron Angelo, this week at our breakfast, and Ron's working on smart manufacturing technologies that will deliver a 30% reduction in energy consumption in a manufacturing operation. Well, we all know what's going on with electricity prices, and we know that the government is working very hard with utilities to work on that, but we should be working on consumption. Right. I mean, it fits our climate goals too, right? Let's all add that in. But from a cost perspective, so I said to Ron, that's going in the strategic plan, Ron. That's in my, that's in the plan. But looking at things, and that's around supply chain resiliency. So really looking at kind of those areas. So really looking at how we're going to use innovation to help drive what we're doing as it relates to workforce. We're launching a platform in late January and early February called Connex. And that is a database of all manufacturers in the state where you can put your capacity and capabilities within that database. And then all the large OEMs have committed to it. And what we want to do is when they want to look for a supplier, they go in the database and they find a Connecticut supplier. I call it Connecticut shoring. And the Manufacturing Innovation Fund is providing a license for every manufacturer. So it's free to every manufacturer. And then there are 11 other states that participate and 12 other states that are looking to participate in this platform. And you can buy a license. We'll give you for 2 years, we'll give you a national license. After that, you can buy a license for $500. You can have a national database of manufacturers. It's really cool how we're going to put this platform in, put it in really well so that we can shorten supply chains. They're talking to a manufacturer, they have their entire supply chain is within a 30-minute drive. Oof. And you can do that in Connecticut because there's 4,400 manufacturers. Swing a stick, you're hitting one of us. and so that's what we want to do is we want to shorten supply chains, reduce transportation costs. So supply chain resiliency is all about cost reduction, reduce energy costs. There's initiatives around healthcare costs. I mean, that's those aren't manufacturing issues, right? Those are global issues. But we look at using our voice in manufacturing to help drive those issues at through the governor's office and through policy and through DECD. So really around that supply chain resiliency. And I talked about the grow the industry. What kind of manufacturers does it make sense for us to have here in Connecticut? And listen, any manufacturer can come to Connecticut, and we're going to love them. We love all our children, but there are certain kinds that we really want to attract because they fit our profile. We have a very highly educated workforce. We have a lot of advanced degrees. Ted Fisher and I were out at the air show in Farnborough, and we were basically, anybody that was building anything that was leaving the ground, we're like, well, you need to come to Connecticut. We have Aerospace Alley. I mean, if you're building something that leaves the ground, you can't fly without Connecticut.
Right.
You can't. I mean, and on anything that's leaving the ground, I am 100% confident there's a Connecticut part on there. So nothing here leaves the ground, whether it's a missile, a spaceship, a airplane, a helicopter, a drone, any of that kind of stuff. You can't fly without Connecticut. So,
yeah, no, that's a really smart approach, and it just seems like you've got a lot of energy and excitement towards what's coming in 2023.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's really incredible. We have offshore wind coming down to New London,
right off New London,
right?
Yeah.
And so at a weak moment, I raised my hand, and I'm now the state lead for offshore wind. But and actually, I did.
Remember that getting control of your schedule conversation we were having earlier? Yeah,
I wouldn't say at a weak moment. It was during the time period where Deputy Commissioner, now Commissioner Alexandra Dom was doing it, and she was transitioning the role. And I looked at her and I said, I want to help you.
Right.
Let me help you. She goes, do you have the bandwidth? Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
I don't, but I'll figure it out. And so now with offshore wind, and when you think about it, so 50% of the spend in offshore wind, and this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, 50% is around operations and maintenance, right? So that's the supply chain. We need manufacturers that are making replacement parts. We need manufacturers that are providing repair for these, and
service repair and just keeping it running.
And the hub for all of that is in New London, Connecticut. Every offshore wind project is going through New London and the heavy lift pier. Massachusetts has their program, and Rhode Island has theirs, and New York has theirs. All of their stuff is going through that pier. And so we're working very closely with the tier one suppliers about what they need within the supply chain, and we're connecting our supply chain to those needs so that, the idea is Connecticut first, and then what Advanced CT is doing is if there's a gap, is they'll recruit a company to come in to fill that gap. But we want to get Connecticut manufacturers up as much as we can. I was I was at the inauguration, and Commissioner Dykes pulled me aside and she goes, "I want to talk to you about sustainable aviation fuel, and I want to talk to you about anaerobic digestion, because that's going to be feedstock for the hydrogen that we're going to do around sustainable aviation fuel." And I'm like, "Well, thanks. Just drop that one in. Let's talk about that." But those are real things that are happening, and that's just, those are things that are important for us to make sure that we're focused on and making sure we're playing a role in it. We're combing through the CHIPS and Science Act to see what role Connecticut can play in the CHIPS and Science Act. We're not building a gigafactory. We don't have the land, and we don't, quite frankly, don't have the workforce at this point in time. But where can we fit, and what is our role there? There's 18 surface mount technology companies in Connecticut. I didn't know that. Now I know that. Now you know it. Now everybody else knows it. But what's, and I'm talking to them about what do they see, and what
does that look like? How could
and then we have ASML, which is a chip maker, right?
Correct.
And they're adding
the machines to make the chips.
Exactly. So that's another exciting area. And then all the stuff that's coming out of the Department of Energy. And then we have the defense stuff, all the stuff, the digital transformation, additive manufacturing, all the stuff that's coming through the defense sector that benefits every manufacturer in the state as well. So there's our problem is not opportunity. Our problem is focus.
Yeah,
what is
actually,
it that we can prioritize?
You just jumped ahead of where I was because trying to get control of your calendar, absolutely massively important. But you need to get control of priorities, right? Because you can't do 17 things or 1,700 things.
The hunter who chases 3 rabbits catches none.
That's right. So you're working on through the strategic plan, coming up with what is the priority going to be, so you know what you're going to be going after.
Yeah, and it's and those priorities can be challenged and argued and discussed, and I'm willing to have those discussions. But we need to get stuff done, right? And we just need to we need to have a foot in the present, but also be looking out to the future to really talk about what's coming and how do we play a role in that, so that and we know when something new comes, sometimes something old goes away, right? We all landlines, right? I mean, having a phone in your house, that used to be a good business.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go into it right now. But so we know we have to pay attention to that to say what technology is coming, what innovations are coming, how do we capitalize that in the manufacturing sector, and then what could possibly be obsoleted, and how do we refocus that back into regular manufacturing, and just be up on those trends and kind of being a little bit future focused as well. So,
well, listen, we wish you the best of success. We've already came back and held you accountable to last year, so we know that's going to happen next year as well. I really love the focus, Paul. I think that's just so important. And I was really surprised that you said that the communication was a challenge, because as you mentioned about your schedule, it feels like you were everywhere this year. I mean, it was like you talk about can't swing a stick in Connecticut without hitting manufacturer. It felt like you couldn't go somewhere without running into Paul. So, but good on you for really, I think, identifying some of those real challenges and then tackling them. So I think that's really important. Look forward to more and more success as the years go on.
Well, and I'm happy to come back every year with the report card and talk to the entire audience about the strategic plan, the report card, our success, where we didn't succeed, what we learned, right? Because if it's not a success, it's a learning experience, right? And so where we learned, and then what we're going to focus on for the upcoming year. So this is a great way for me to continue to communicate.
There you go. Well, listen, on that note, I did put together, you've been on the show a few times. You've done the old rapid fire round of questions. I came up with a new rapid fire just for you.
Okay.
You ready?
Red Sox. No.
All right. First one. You eating in or going out?
Eating in.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, gee, Batman.
Batman. Cryptocurrency, the future or a fad?
Ask me 6 months ago. Probably has a future. Not quite sure what it is based on the current environment, but
there's a future.
There's a future.
What was or what will be your first post-COVID leisure travel destination?
Leisure travel destination post-COVID, probably Miami.
Miami, yeah. Visit your grandson. There you go.
Or as we say, my grandson and those 2 adults he lives with. My son and my daughter-in-law.
What's your best guess, now that you're getting control of your schedule, on how many manufacturers you're going to visit in 2023?
I would say north of 100.
North of 100?
Yeah, that's and what we do is those are tours. So those are where I go to the manufacturer and I tour. I met with 10 of them today at a roundtable, a manufacturing roundtable. So I don't count those. Yeah. So I don't. I mean, I always look at I've seen 100. There's been manufacturers that have seen me speak that I tell them, okay, you can do all my little catchphrases. You can go ahead and you can do it because you've seen it so many times. But yeah, I would expect it to still
100. It's the over under. You're going over 100.
I'll go over 100. Yeah.
There we go. Are there any new Connecticut manufactured products or that were new to you that you tried or started this year thanks to all your tours?
Well, I mean, Athletic Brewing. I'll start right there. I mean, there's always a 6-pack of Athletic in my refrigerator now, next to the other stuff. But it was an interesting story with that. My son and his wife that live in Columbus, I went to their house, opened it up, and there's a 6-pack of Athletic in Columbus, Ohio. And I go, what's this? This is in Connecticut, and they go, oh yeah, we go to parties, we drink a beer, then an Athletic, a beer, then an Athletic. So we're still, we're and they're 29. So you're like, well, that's why they're growing so much. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's certainly a lot of the manufacturers that you start learning about their products, and and those products just become kind of part of what you're doing and things like that. I mean, lesser evil popcorn. I can
I can't wait. We're gonna have lesser evil on. I can't wait to try it in Athletic.
A lot of the stuff is around food, by the way. So
there's a theme we're picking up on there.
I was up at Dairy Mark. Is just put in this huge warehouse facility, and they gave us a little thing of cheese, and someone says, "Oh, did you get some cheese?" Ate it on the car on the way back. And then the same thing with popcorn. The Commissioner Alexander Dom, she goes, "I love their popcorn. Did they give you any?" Yeah, they gave me a bag on Friday.
Didn't make it back with
Monday. I said, did not make it through the weekend.
There you go.
I said, but I'll bring you there. I said, you have to see this facility. So
that'd be great.
So she's coming with me out there. So,
is there a book that you're reading right now, or your favorite book from the last year that you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, I do. I actually brought it with me. So there was this group, like a group of teammates, an organization, and they were called a self-branded group of idiots. And they had some leadership. They had this leader that really kind of managing all these weird personalities and all this other stuff. And in doing that, really created a championship environment and a championship team. So I'm reading this book, and it's called Francona. So it's all about Terry Francona.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Terry Francona, his Red Sox years, and how taking the job as the manager of the Red Sox, and of course winning 2 championships, and and doing all that. So I'm just getting into it a little bit about Tito and his his younger years and his father and hanging around baseball and all that other stuff. But this is believe it or not, a book on leadership.
Nice.
It's really a book on leadership and creating championship teams, not just a nice little book about Terry Francona. But I thought you might enjoy it.
I very much do enjoy it.
Fan,
Yeah, absolutely. I put it on my list. Nice. Well, Paul, it has been absolute pleasure having you on. Look forward to bringing you back to celebrate this year.
Ari, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you continuing to support our efforts to communicate all the great things that are going on in manufacturing. Your podcast is a very, very important part of that communication strategy. And I thank you for everything that you're doing to help promote and support manufacturing. So it helps make my job just a little bit easier. So thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure. Right. You're welcome.
All right. Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.